Hey, welcome to another Industry Night with me, Nycci Nellis, the show that takes you on the deep dive of the happenings in the hospitality industry. And oh my God, are there a lot going on in the hospitality industry? If you're new here, hi, welcome to Industry Night. A little bit of background about me. I've been covering the food, wine, and hospitality scene for over 22 years now. It all started with the list, areyouonit.com, the online e-zine that tells you everything happening in the DC metro area. Events, check. Openings, check. Food promotions, check. Roundups, all on there. Everything you need to know about what's happening in the hospitality industry in the DMV is all in the list, areyouonit.com. Of course, you tune in every Sunday to the only food and wine variety show in DC, Foodie and the Beast. We just celebrated being on air for 16 years. You follow me at NYCCI-NELLIS on, I'm going to lie and say all the platforms. Truthfully, you follow me on Instagram because that's the most fun, and on YouTube because that is now where you find this show, Industry Night. This is the podcast that's been around for over 8 years. It is a podcast and also a vodcast because apparently that's a thing. So you get to download this show on any podcast platform that you listen to or also watch it on YouTube. There's also great outtakes too with our shorts, so you do want to check that as well. And I have a terrific show for you today. So it's great to be back on air. I am kicking off 2025. It has been wild since we were last together. I was out in fabulous Fauquier County. We just did such an amazing show and so many terrific things. I'm staying in the positive. Terrific things have been happening in DC, and I really kind of want to talk about it because, as you know, the temperature has changed greatly here. But there's been so many openings in the last 4 weeks that I feel like I just have to give a shout out to a couple of them. I'll be looking at my notes on this because there's so many. So Alara, the new Middle Eastern restaurant, just opened in Georgetown. Gina Cervani just opened up another Buffalo in Bergen in Upper Northwest. The Tiger's Dumpling is in a food hall, and I cannot wait to check it out. Jared Silver does Silver and Sons Barbecue, and he has finally opened up a brick and mortar. There is an Alta Strada. Michael Schlau has brought it back at Embassy Row. It's in a hotel, the Canopy. For those of you who love Chiquette, but it is a very expensive Michelin-starred restaurant, there is now a lighter version called Atelier de Chiquette, and it's downstairs, and it's a way to enjoy the menu without the cost. I don't know, I haven't done it yet, but I can't wait. Elena James All Day Cafe. It is literally down the street from me. It's the guys from Opal and Nina May, and it is darling. And if you've been living under a rock, welcome, because Mineta Tavern is open in Union Market District. Keith McNally is slaying it there, especially with his Lucy Mercer bar upstairs. But what I love the most about Mineta Tavern, as a Mineta Tavern fan in New York, is that when you walk by it in Union Market District, you kind of are like, huh, has this been here all along? They just did such a beautiful job. So it's very exciting. And then lastly, for you delicatessen lovers, Jewish delis, we have one in DC. It's called Mickey's and Mel's. And the sandwiches are mammoth and gorgeous and delicious. So lots to check out. Oh, and also the James Beard Foundation released their semi-finalist list. That was 2 weeks ago, but when you hear this, that was 4 weeks ago. Anyway, DC really represents, it's very exciting. So many well-deserved nominations are on that list, and you could go to the list, areyouonit.com, to see the list. The finalists will be announced on April 2nd in LA, and of course I'll be covering it, so you can hear all about it then. All right, so let's go to what's next. So I don't even have time because there's so much going on to get into my fabulous 48 hours in New York City. When you follow me at NYCCI-NELLIS, you can see all my eatings and all my travel because I did go to Amazonia here in DC. I've also been to L'Avant-Garde, and I've also been to Osteria Moza, so you can follow all of that. And on my trip to New York, you do want to see that I went to Cookbook because it was fantastic. Oh, and now I'm doing a ton of travel, in case you missed that. I was in St. Martin, I was in Medellin, and I was in New Orleans. All of that is on the grams, and we are starting a new column called Where I've Been, and we'll have more there as well. Okay, so much. And I love the industry because even when things are super dark and dismal, the hospitality industry is really the bright point, right? You can go into a restaurant, you can have a glass of wine, you can be greeted by somebody who just says hi with a smile, and it can really change your day. And what's happening here in DC with so many new openings, beautiful design, great locations, delicious items, and hospitality, it makes you feel so good. And that sort of takes me to like where I am right now. So I'm at Jacques in Navy Yard. This is where I'm doing my new residency. I'm doing 4 shows here. If you're listening, you can't see it, but if you're watching, then you can see I have this gorgeous mural behind me. The place is just filled with magnificent art. And I am so grateful to Dmitri Chekaldin because he is the owner of DBG Hospitality. They own Dacha Beer Garden in Shaw and Navy Yard, and Jacques here in the Navy Yard in this beautiful location. And later in the show, I have chef, bar owner, cookbook author, and Bakers Against Racism activist, Paola Velez. And I cannot wait to talk to her. If you have not seen her gorgeous book, you're about to. But first, let's get to Dmitri and learn more about this property. So now I'm here with Dmitri. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for hosting Industry Night. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I'm so fortunate that I get to take this show, not just all over the city, but like kind of all over the DMV, and meet with people such as yourself and get to hear your stories. So I'd love to learn more because you moved here when you were a teenager from Russia, but you weren't thinking about going into the hospitality industry. How did that work for you?
Well, first of all, welcome and thank you. I love your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I moved here as a teenager. I just turned 19. The year last century, 1994, August 25th. I remember it was a torrential rain coming from Dallas Airport. I thought, where did I land?
Right.
And it was before the internet, so there was a loose research on where am I landing.
Don't you want to know how we got anywhere? How did we get anywhere without Google?
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
That's a totally different story.
Right.
Yeah. But humidity got me right away. I'm from Moscow, and it's continental climate, and here we have subtropics. So it was an awakening. Yeah, I came here to study at GW and swim for them.
And then, but at what point did the hospitality bug hit you?
So the year was 2012, and I just wrapped a long stint at Tata Group, the huge Indian conglomerate. I was in finance and project management.
There are so many people in finance who dip their fingers in the hospitality world.
Well, me and my business partner and dear friend Elena, we always thought about, having. I wanted to have a restaurant, and he wanted to have a club.
Okay.
And so we kind of met in the middle.
Like chocolate, peanut butter, chocolate, putting it together.
And the inspiration was that small beer garden on 14th Street. It was called The Standard until they got a cease and desist from the Standard Hotels.
Right, and then they became
Garden District.
Garden District.
Right.
And they do have a pretty devout following.
Absolutely.
And it's the size of like you and I sitting here. It's
exactly.
tiny. We are talking about
the Garden District.
Garden District. The Garden District is like this big, tiny, but with a devout following.
Yeah, and we thought we could do a bigger one, a real European beer garden. And so one day we just decided, let's go and look at properties. And here we were, 7th Street, standing, we're at Compass Coffee now. And the real estate agent
This is what, 2011?
2012.
2012. Okay, so Shaw at the 14th Street is percolating at this point. Restaurants are opening, things are happening. But the 9th Street and 7th Street where Shaw is, things were slowly starting, but the investment had not been made yet.
Absolutely. It was raw. It was still very
Raw
raw.
is a good way of describing it.
So we're standing there, and it's a warehouse, and the real estate agent is talking about it, and Ilya goes, "Yeah, we can have a beer garden on the roof." And I said, "No, that's not gonna work." And we stand outside, and I point to a parking lot, chain link fence, next to a Chinese takeout, and I say, "That's what we need." And Ilya goes, "Well, but it's not for rent." And I said, "Well, why not? Let's go and ask."
Right.
And we did.
Wow.
And if it's, Chinese owners and Russians can talk to Chinese.
Okay.
So,
well,
here we
that
are.
is sort of the beauty of DC, right? Like,
Yep.
it's so international here. So you launched the first beer garden to great success. You do this magnificent mural right there that really changed the dynamic of the street,
Yep.
right? Like, it was the first piece of massive intentional art
Yes.
on that street. Was that always part of your plan? Given that if you're watching, you will see the most gorgeous piece of art behind me. So I'm just sort of leading into that a little bit.
I am an art lover. The mural of Liz Taylor at the beer garden happened because the wall was there, and it lent itself to a great piece of art.
And for people who don't know, in DC, there is a very famous Marilyn Monroe
Yes.
up in Cleveland Park.
That's right.
And really, for the longest time, it was really the only sort of art on a building kind of thing. Now it's a national trend. You go to any city, you see fabulous artworks on buildings now. Thank God. I think it's magnificent. But you guys were really like at the beginning of that trend.
There's another one. I think Maryland marked the neighborhood of Tenleytown.
Yes.
But in Adams Morgan.
Oh, yes, of course, the Madam.
The
And Madam
Madam.
Sorgan, how could I forget?
Right. So-
I lived down the street from there.
So we thought, we have the wall, let's mark the neighborhood.
Love it.
And Liz Taylor was actually involved in the Logan Shore neighborhood.
With the Walker Clinic, yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very
I
true.
met her grandkids.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, they came for a board meeting, and I was standing with her granddaughter, and she goes, "Yeah, that's my grandma."
Oh, I love that. That's incredible. Well, let's fast forward because we don't have a ton of time. And since I'm going to be here multiple times, we'll have lots of time to discuss sort of your business and the model and everything. But here we are at Jackie. We're in the Navy Yard. There is a dacha here,
Yep.
which kills when there's something going on because it's a beer garden and people love that. But you went indoors
Yep.
with a restaurant. Can we talk about
Yep.
sort of how you started right before the pandemic in 2019
Sure.
and where you are now? Because there is a shift. You guys are changing.
Yes. The first idea was to have two services that under the name of Dacha, the Dacha Beer Garden and the Dacha Restaurant. Well, that didn't last very long because people would sit down and, ask for a pretzel when you were trying to sell them a fancy steak.
Sure.
So we shifted, and then we shifted again, and then COVID happened. Oh, and by the way, the 2019 was the year when Nats won the title, so we had to deal with insanity. I mean, if you've ever seen that movie with Brad Pitt, about the
Moneyball.
no, the pandemic war, the zombie.
Oh,
movie.
the zombie sees like War Z.
War Z.
Yes.
This was it.
Okay,
This was it.
that's
so
a riot.
in a good way. In a good way. So we had to adapt, and we keep adapting. And our goal here is to deliver value, whilst being in a wonderful atmosphere and I don't want to say fine dining, but more of a casual fine dining.
Okay, like better dining.
That's exactly
Better
right,
dining.
yes.
And so it will be breaking news.
Yes.
It is, but by the time this come out, it won't be. It will have already been broken. But we can announce that you have a new chef on board that is changing the menus, changing the concept,
Yep.
and really changing how you engage with your clientele.
There's that sense that in every business endeavor, there's an element of luck, and I actually kind of have to pinch myself that we ended up with Chef Domenico Carnaccia. I've been to Cafe Milano many a times through the years. To think that Domenico is coming here, this is the news.
Right. It's very exciting.
It's very exciting for the neighborhood and for us, for the staff, but for the neighborhood, for the Navy Yard, I think it's an amazing addition.
And if you can just give us a little we'll talk with Domenico next time we're in, but just before I wrap up with you, what does that look like on the menu? What does that look like on the plate?
The reality of a chef of that stature, and especially him being Italian, of course there will be Italian infusions.
Right. I'm expecting pasta. I just want to be clear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I've already tasted several specials, and it's phenomenal. But he's here to have fun. That's what I'm really discovering, talking to him every day. And he's looking at our previous experiences, and he's looking at his experience, and I think what he's going to end up doing before we settle on any sort of definitive cuisine style for this place, I think he's going to continue sourcing great ingredients, Italian, Mediterranean, American coastal cuisine, ultimately value and fun atmosphere. That's what he is going to bring here.
Well, and I think that makes sense for where you are, right? And you don't want to be pigeonholed to be like just Italian or just specific.
You can't, because the fans of baseball are different from fans of soccer.
Of course.
Think Pinot Grigio and buttery Chardonnay. They're totally different story.
That's such a great example. Well, also, for people who don't really understand what the Navy Yard is like, yes, you have the baseball, we have the baseball stadium on one side. We have gorgeous views of the water over here.
That's right.
You have the soccer stadium behind us. And, oh, by the way, they also do music events.
That's right.
It's so many different people who are coming here for so many different reasons. And as you and I were talking about off air, there's also so much new residential.
Popping out every week.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. We're excited, and we're excited for this new upcoming season, for the beer gardens, and especially for Jackie. New people, new food, exciting times.
Excellent. I'm going to stop you there, and we're going to go to our next guest. And now we have a woman on the show who I've known for a really long time. I think I've known her since the beginning of her career in DC. She may correct me. But I met Paola Velez when she was this brilliant pastry chef for Tony Chinham at Iron Gate in DuPont Circle. And that was 15 years ago?
No, it's been since 2017.
Okay.
And I came to DC in 2016. So you did me for 1 year.
Okay, all right, so almost 10 years. And but what was interesting is at the time, that was an Italian restaurant, but you were bringing in really interesting ingredients at the time. I remember you were doing things that were really brilliant with bread as well as with the pastry. And then, fast forward a couple of years, you were with Kwame at Kith and Kin, and now you have this gorgeous book, and you're co-owner of a restaurant, Providencia. You have so many things going on, but I'd love to, if you'll take me on a slow roll for a little bit, and I just sort of want to talk about sort of your heritage, which really informs, because, Bodega Bakes, if you have any questions on her heritage, it really informs who you are, and I'd love to start with your family and sort of those influences and how we got here today.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, my story maybe even starts at the womb.
Okay.
So my family owned multiple restaurants in the island of Manhattan. So it was.
You're going to say something else. The Isle of Manhattan. Okay.
Just the little of Manhattan, and some later on, some in Port Chester and Connecticut as well. But we had 9 restaurants in Manhattan.
Wow. And
we were open from the early 80s all the way until the mid 2000s.
What kind of restaurants?
It was actually Tex-Mex, So my family, Dominican.
Right.
My mother's cousin is Italian, so it was Dominican Italians opening a Tex-Mex restaurant and thriving to the point where when I talked.
So no Dominican restaurants?
No.
Fascinating. Okay.
So I think that from a very early age, I saw the impact that you can have by cooking other cuisines that aren't inherently your own, you know, and you learn to respect other people's cultures that way. So I was
so
almost
agree with
born
that.
in the restaurant that was on 91st and Broadway. You know, luckily they made it to the hospital, and I, you know, came out there instead.
Major entrance.
You know, it would have been kind of like, I don't want to be, you know, like you know how there's pastors' kids? And I didn't want to be like a restaurant kid, you know? But I worked there when I was growing up. I would watch everybody working, and I would have a booth specifically for me in any of the locations that I would visit. After school, I would do my homework, and then you could look right into the kitchen and see everybody like just having hot pans, cutting hot behind, and you're just like, oh my God, what is that?
Now, can I back up for a second? Was your family, are you first gen, or were they first gen?
So I am first gen. I'm
Okay.
first gen. But I mean, I think the new qualifier is second gen if I was born here. First gen would be, which I don't understand yet too. So I think we're
Okay.
learning this together.
Okay, because that's
But,
new. Yes.
Yeah, it is very
But
new.
I think, what's interesting is that, again, it's the immigrant story, right? Your parents came
Yeah.
here, they opened up restaurants, you know, you were raised in the restaurants. I mean, it's so much information that is so important
Yeah.
because it becomes who you are
Yeah.
because of their history now becomes your history.
Exactly. But I think also it kind of explains some of why I have so many connections to so many big names in the industry. At the very least, if people don't know me yet, I mentioned Marianne.
Everybody should know you.
Oh, no.
Hello. That's why you're on this show.
I guess. But, you know, I'll mention, you know, Marianne's in Manhattan, and everybody's like,
Oh, right.
you know, and they're like, well, I have this memory, or like college students are like, I have this memory. Folks who worked on Wall Street have this memory, and like we impacted so many New Yorkers' lives, you know.
Sure.
So it's really fun to make a cookbook that kind of like goes back and honors New York heritage, even though I don't live there anymore, you know, and I'm
Right.
very proud to live in Washington D.C., you know. So that's like the genesis of what I experienced as a kid, but then you kind of translate into like graduating high school in 2008, and like the recession was happening, and
Yes, it
everything
was.
was going, you know, and you kind of feel like maybe this is like the millennial existence, like things are bleak, right?
2008 was bleak. It was
2008
really
was
bleak.
so scary.
I wasn't graduating from high school. I was living life, and let me tell you, it was bleak.
So when I wanted to, I don't know, like I had scholarships for like operatic singing.
Okay.
You know, I'm definitely not gonna like.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole,
no,
but we will
don't.
at some
No.
point.
I mean, the voice is gone.
Okay.
Gone. You know, but too many like behinds. You know, so. But you know, in that, I had to choose. Do I want to go down the route of being a true creative, you know, and focusing on just classical music, or do I want to find a trade? And I chose trade because
Okay.
of my family history.
And how did they feel? Were they like, go be a pastry chef, go
No.
be a chef?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, they weren't even considering that I was going to go into like the arts.
Okay.
You know, they were just hoping that I would be a doctor, a
was
lawyer,
gonna say doctor.
engineer.
Right.
I'm, you know, I'm too nice to be a lawyer. I am squeamish with blood, so
Okay.
if you're in the kitchen and you cut yourself, I'm going to be on the floor with you.
Right.
You know, and then I guess I could have been an engineer, but
Whatever. Well,
You know?
listen, baking is a science, so it did come in that way. So you went to baking school? Cooking school?
I went to culinary school.
You did go to
yeah.
culinary school.
I just, for me, I didn't see like a very solid foundation in just studying baking and pastry. That was too concentrated. Yeah, concentrated and niched down. So I did study everything, you know.
And where'd you go?
I went to Le Cordon Bleu.
You did.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that was, you know, fun.
Okay, so you finish. You decide to go into pastry, or do you decide?
Nope.
Not originally. So you're cooking.
I
let's
became
talk-
a sous chef. I've cooked for Saudi princes, and
Wow.
I worked in New York. I kept my head down, but then I met my husband, and I was like, wow, that guy's hot.
Okay.
I need to go on dates, you know, and I can't have him waiting for me.
At 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, this is crazy. He's going to leave me for somebody who's normal. So I went to Chef Jacques Torres and I was just like, hi, you don't know me, but I would love to just work with you and learn how to do chocolate work,
Right.
And he was just like, where did you go to college? And I'm like, Le Cordon Bleu. He's like, you start tomorrow.
Amazing.
And through that, in 4 months, I was promoted to pastry sous chef, the youngest in the company, and I worked until.
He is the chocolate master.
Yeah.
So
we just did a video for the Jacques Pépin Foundation in his home of all places, and we just cooked and like made chocolate sculptures. And he's just like, Paola, why did you leave me? And I'm like, Chef, my husband, he needed to go to DC, and I chose to go with him. And he was like, I could have gone with you. You could have stayed with me. And I'm like, Chef, but it was really fun.
He's a character.
He's so nice. Him and Hasi were, I talk about it in the book, but they were, folks that believed in me before I even knew I had promise, right? I had the connections. I had the work ethic. But, I was very fine with just being a sous chef for the rest of my life and being in the back. And they kept pushing me forward, And even like now, they had to promote my book. And he was just like, I'm in the book. And I'm like, you are.
You also have several books of your own, but yes, isn't that lovely?
But I mean, for him, I think it's probably the first time that somebody's been like, actually, I owe this to you because you believed in me and you trusted my creative voice before anybody else thought that I had a leg to stand on.
I love that. So when you came to DC, was Iron Gate your first place?
No, I actually worked.
That's where I met you, so I feel like that's your first place.
Well, it's the first place that I actively became a public figure, So it was the first time, and Amber, she was like Mama
Amber
Bear.
Fowl, okay,
yeah, she was like Mama Bear, and she was like, you have something special. I'm gonna put you to the forefront. And she media trained me, and she like got me ready to face the camera. And I'm so shy. That's why I talk low, and I'm always like, hello.
No, I wasn't trying to call you out on that.
No,
I was worried about because I am a boomer.
No. I talk
I have a loud voice.
I talk low until it's like a special interest subject,
okay.
and I'm like, But usually I try to be like, hi, I'm gonna talk about this because I'm trying to be like thoughtful of your time and why we're here, But I'm also like thinking through it because you when you're like as busy as we are, you just keep going. Right. So like sometimes I have to reflect and say, oh yeah, that's right. I did do these things, or my family did own these restaurants, and you stop and you reflect and you
I think it's important. The reason why I when we do an interview like this, when I do an interview like this, it's so important for people to understand the foundation. Like you just didn't show up one day and say, I'm going to write a cookbook. You know what I mean? Like that's just not how it happens. And industry support obviously is incredibly important, whether it's other chefs or somebody who gives you media training and Amber Fowl or somebody like that. But all those things they're building blocks that help you achieve success, provided you see them. Not everybody does. Some people are just they don't realize the foundations that they're standing on. But you did.
I try really hard to stop and think about who's impacting my life at that moment and who's like pushing me to be a better version of myself. And that then helps me kind of like understand that I stand on the back of great people, and I don't do this by myself. I didn't just appear out of the ether. By the time that, you met me at Iron Gate, I had already, I had the Jacques Pépin Foundation and Jacques Pépin sending me letters, making sure that I was okay. Christina Tosi hiring me when I moved here to Washington, D.C. because she knew I would feel homesick, because they heard that I left to come here. And I sacrificed my career for my husband. And they gave me something in return. They restored my career. And I actually took everything off of my resume. When I moved here, I took everything off. Because it's threatening. It's a very strong resume for somebody that young. So I just took stuff off.
Okay, I wish I could take that all back for you.
know.
Why would you do that?
Because then I could regain and relearn how to integrate myself into the Washington D.C. community.
Okay.
You know, and I talk to folks who, let's say that they're opening up another concept, something that they have in New York or Philly or Los Angeles, and they're coming here to Washington D.C. They'll call me and they'll ask me, what do I need to do to be accepted by Washington D.C.?
Oh, I'll tell them what to do.
And I'm like, first you need to call Nycci.
Yes, that's right. You call me because I will tell you,
You know?
the do's and don'ts of coming to DC.
Right.
Seriously.
And I'm like, if you try to come here and say like I'm this big bad whatever from we don't care about that. We don't. What are you going to do for the Washington D.C. community? How are you going to stand with us every 4 years when things change? What are you going to do for the folks that don't always have, you know, a lofty budget and they work on the hill, you know? So things like that, I walk them through, and I had to learn that on my own. So I had to take everything away and then be humble again and just work my way up. So some folks, you know, I remember when Chef Michael Rafidi, he confronted me. He's like, "Why didn't you tell me that you worked for all these people?"
I could see Mike Rafidi being like, because he's a super quiet, thoughtful. I'm actually interviewing him next week. Quiet, thoughtful, intentional person. And I would think that he would want all the knowledge before he engages to be comfortable. Because, you know, he's
direct,
he's measuring everything that's going on.
And he was like, "Why didn't you let me know? Why didn't you let me know that you came with this pedigree?" And I was like, "Did I do what you wanted me to do?"
Okay, so you were with Isabella, Ada Rose, and Rafidi. I totally forgot about that. And then you went to Kwame?
No. Then I went to Iron Gate.
Okay.
Then I went to Kwame.
Oh, okay. And then the pandemic happened, right? And so I want to sort of take a twist because you were climbing up the ladder of success as a pastry chef and as a mover and shaker in the hospitality industry here in DC with, as we have mentioned, an incredible resume. The pandemic happens, George Floyd happens, and you, Rob Ruba, and
Willa Polini.
Willa get together. Talk to me about Bakers Against Racism and what happened.
For sure. I talk about it in the book too, you know, but what it was...
in the book, Bodega Bakes.
Yes.
Let's lift this baby up. There you go. It's so pretty. We'll get to the book in a second, but let's talk about this.
But I talk about, you know, why we decided to do this global activation. We hit like 4 continents, you know, and we were in 200 plus U.S. cities.
It's crazy. I remember it really well.
And
you came on Foodie and the Beast to talk about it.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it was a very timely like movement for a very timely like moment in history, you know, and that
Can you explain the concept so people
for sure.
understand? I mean, you know, I feel like we need some right now, but go ahead.
Yeah. So Bakers Against Racism is a decentralized bake sale that helps you fundraise. We're like a lighthouse organization that helps you fundraise for organizations that are boots on the ground, like Ayuda in DC, right? They help migrants and undocumented workers to get legal representation, but in the pandemic they were feeding people.
Right.
They were buying them groceries, right? And that was when I realized that we have such a unique power in the collective to change, even if it's just one life, you know? We change the trajectory of what we're doing. And that doesn't mean that we're only doing radical things. You know, we were fundraising for...
No, you're fundraising.
Yeah.
Fundraising is not radical.
No.
Bakers Against Racism is not a radical concept. And I think people should be clear that it wasn't just professional chefs. People all across the country and apparently around the world, if you were a baker, you could be a part of it.
Yeah. You know, we had Bakers Against Racism, Berlin, London, Paris,
amazing.
Mumbai, Australia.
And
you
so
know?
people would bake, have a bake sale, basically. They could get their friends together or whatever, sell things, and then that money went to a charity.
An organization that they all got together, that they championed for. And I would it was very imperative that I didn't choose the organizations. You know, I wanted people to research, but also find things that they find joy in. You know, I knew some surfers in Nova Scotia that then got together and they were surfing to raise funds for Black surfers in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
People were, you know, baking for arts, like the artists, you know, for STEM. There's more than just focusing on the negative. Yeah, we could have funded a few bail funds, but we also were looking at the community and seeing where we could stand in the gap to make sure, like most recently, with Afropunk, I was fundraising for the Black families of Pasadena.
Right.
You know?
And Altadena.
Excuse me, in Altadena. Can I say that again, or?
Yeah, can we redo that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with Afropunk, we were fundraising and we activated for Black families who need help or assistance in Altadena.
Right.
You know, and that is what this organization is. You know, if you
So
feel
it's so funny that you say that, because I felt like I mean, it was such a strong movement, and what you really sort of awakened in me is that it hasn't ended. You're still doing it. Others are doing it. It is still an active organization. It's not in the spotlight in the same way.
Exactly, because I realized that the organization, maybe like 2 years in, right? We're about to hit 5 years, you know?
Unbelievable. I can't believe it.
But 2 years in, there were organizations, big organizations that were asking me to replicate this success for them. And I realized that there was a moment where I could allow, perversion is not the word, but, you know, something that wasn't pure to infiltrate the organization. There was a lot of people that earned nothing from this, gained nothing from this. I myself have not collected $1.
Right, it was altruistic.
Yeah, I haven't, to this day, I collect zero funds. I just fund any of the paperwork that we need so that it's a legal business, websites, etc. Sorry.
That's okay.
So it's, you know, something that I fund myself, you know, and that bakers fund themselves. And I've taught them how to fund it without impacting their own bank accounts. So much so that multiple bakers that activated in 2020 now have businesses, bakeries, because of the rubric that I gave them.
Isn't that amazing?
It's a gift that keeps on giving. And I hope that people, when they hear this and they see this, that they will feel encouraged, not to just focus on the name, but to focus on the fact that we need to help each other more than ever now. You know?
Well, but I think what you make really clear, especially when you talk about the surfers, and you in general, like, you've made your passion your profession, and I can say that as somebody who has done the same thing. I didn't always know my route. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew what was important to me. And I'm always learning every day, as are you. But, you know, you bring in the surfers. You're like, they weren't baking.
No.
But they saw the model, and they're like, yeah, we can help too.
Yeah.
So I want to springboard off of all that, because it is, I think it's who you are innately, to Bodega Bakes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the book. It's so gorgeous. The photography is special.
Oh, thank you.
And it's filled with all your ooey gooey deliciousness. I mean, your cookies to me are always like so delicious. But what I found interesting about it is your sort of no-nonsense way of talking to the home baker.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people they're so scared to bake. They're scared to cook too, but baking is more precise. But you have a lot of interesting ingredients in here that maybe people aren't as familiar with or not familiar with in baking.
Yeah.
And I'd love to sort of talk about how you came together with this collection of recipes.
For sure. So my baseline is honoring Americana classics and finding my identity as a first, second gen.
Whichever, you're a gen. A gen. To understand and adopt the American identity. This book is a love letter to the American identity, you know, and through food, I was able to find my place in America. And so much so that I
was a culinary diplomat for the United States. You know,
Don't start me on that because that program is over and it's so disappointing. But go ahead. It'll come back.
It'll come back.
It'll
It
come
always comes
back. Yes.
And the fact is that through these baked goods, I was able to tell my story and find my story. Like you said, right? Like sometimes you just are an amoeba like floating in the ether, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is the purpose. But something else, as you can know, as you know about me, I'm someone who likes to give and give abundantly and freely, right? So for $35, or if it's on sale, maybe even less, you can learn everything that I know from the time that I started doing this journey until now, current day.
Right.
And I gave real recipes, right, which I thought was insane that maybe folks don't do that, you know.
Oh no, and it's not a hit on them.
No.
But I will just interrupt with a quick story about a recipe. I was at a restaurant, I will not name it. The food was fabulous, and my guest and I were going on and on and on about one of the dishes. And the GM came over and said, "So I hear you like that dish." And we were like, "We do. Oh my God, it's so good." She's like, "Well," and she hands us the recipe, which hospitality-wise, I was like, "That's gorgeous."
Yeah.
But now my girlfriend doesn't really cook. She's like, "I'm going to go home and make this." And I was like, "There's 2 ingredients missing." The key ingredients that make it so delicious
We're missing.
were missing. And I understand why, because I get it, but I was like, but I know what's missing, you know?
but for me, right, like innovation and progress only stops once we start gatekeeping and stop sharing information freely. So not only is every single recipe real, they're scalable for restaurants. So they're not just formatted for the home cook, right? There's sneaky language in there that I'm speaking directly to chefs, and I'm telling them, hey, it's going to be really hard and really expensive in the next coming years, and you're going to use this as your baking Bible because I want you to succeed regardless of if I'm in the restaurant or not.
Oh my God.
You know, and I teach people, I break it down for home cooks, I break it down for chefs, and I make sure that I keep on sharing, because I truly believe that if we stop and we're afraid that maybe somebody that's younger, or maybe somebody that's better than you, or maybe somebody that has more resources than you.
You're talking about living in fear.
Right. And I was like, you know, if I truly believe that I'm that girl, as I, you know, writing a cookbook like dictates, right? I will believe that I will have more recipes to share in the future.
Yes, you will.
You know?
I love that.
And that is how I made this book. This is not what originally was going to be on shelves. You know, I stopped the process, and my co-author and I, Emily Timberlake, we rewrote the book in a month.
Wow.
We rewrote I only had 7 months to make it, by the way.
Okay.
So like if you know book language,
I do know book language. That is like impossible, but go ahead.
But, and when I shopped my proposal, I had 150 completed recipes that I was just like, I'm willing to put 150 of these recipes in the book. And luckily, thank you God, they like trimmed it down. So we're like at a like 120 plus maybe, you know, but I wanted people to, I know people put cookbooks in their restaurants and they use them as a reference point, as a guide, maybe it's verbatim, I don't know, and I can't judge because I made this for the public and for chefs especially. And I hope, you know, Never Martel spoke about it today, but when folks see this 2 weeks from now, you know, he spoke about where are the pastry chefs in Washington, D.C.
It's a City Paper article. I will put that in the show note links. It's a very good article. It's very important for people to understand that it isn't a skill and worth paying for, but math. And restaurants have to be able to afford it.
And also like incoming tariffs and the cost of goods, the bird flu, everything that you think is going to impact whether or not a restaurant has a good pastry menu or even a pastry chef, it's a perfect storm for our industry failing, you know? And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that we don't fail. that we have, something that we can pass each other. If I were if I were Martha Stewart or Stephen Colbert, I would just give these books away,
right?
Because I truly believe that people just need the information so that they can keep innovating. American cuisine, especially Southern cuisine, should be lauded as high as French cuisine, Italian cuisine.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that if we stop now because we're afraid of somebody else going viral off of our recipe, then American innovation will.
Listen, flattery. What's the line? Flattery is the best form of
I think
compliment or something.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going. Imitation. Thank you.
But it's one of those things where I made this book, and I hope that people read it. That it's not just a coffee book table, and that they will get.
Although I want to say, for the record, it's beautiful enough to be on a coffee table because and the pictures are so gorgeous. But I want to move on because we're going to run out of time.
Oh, for sure.
So we'll tell people at the end where they can get the book. I do want to talk about Providencia.
Yeah.
And you're also going to be doing a Substack because
Yeah.
you don't have enough time, or you have so much time. You have nothing else to do with your time. So let's talk about Providencia, which is this little gem of a bar off of H Street Northeast.
Yeah.
You're like partnering with good friend Eric Brunner Yang, who I love. Tell me about it a little bit, or I've been there, but tell everybody else about it.
So Providencia is Dominican, Salvadorian, and Taiwanese, and we just take all the heritages of the owners, and we try to innovate something new, different, exciting, while honoring Salvadorian cuisine, because there's a huge population of Salvadorians in Washington, D.C.
There is.
And it's really fun for them to come and see their food presented in a way that makes them feel like they're going home, but also feeling like the same innovation, American innovation, is pushing their cuisine forward.
I don't want to say elevated because I think it's
No.
wrong, but I think it's a representation, right? Using the ingredients,
Yeah.
using the idea, and somebody else being like, it's not your mother's, it's my version,
Sometimes
right?
it's just a pupusa or tamal, right?
Right.
But having that type of representation makes people feel seen and heard. And I think that Providencia is in the business of making sure that people feel comfortable, seen, and heard while they dine with us and they imbibe with us,
Right.
And that it's just 22 seats, so we're not.
I know, it's super tiny.
And we're not trying to
I
like.
love that.
Yeah, it's like we really set out to be like a community bar. Eater was like, oh, they're best bar of DC, and we were like, no, but we were very thankful for.
But you take it. Yes, thank you.
But it is one of those things where every single moment, we have folks that are exchange students from China that come and they feel comfortable and welcome, and sometimes they just show us Little Red Book and they show us the photos of what they want to order, and
Right.
we're like,
Okay.
absolutely. Like I joined Little Red Book months ago before like the TikTok fiasco,
Right.
and I was on there and I was like, Paola,
Shut up.
and they were like, oh, chef, and I'm like, my Mandarin is bad.
Okay.
It's terrible, but
That sounded pretty good to me.
it's not. It's like
Okay.
it's like a little bit, but I could do better. Is what I'm saying. Like
Okay.
I could learn more.
Okay.
But I was like, hi, I see that you guys come here and we want to make sure that you're happy and that you feel accommodated, and there is a language barrier. So are there things that we can do better or things that you want to ask here, And then we had folks that were translating and like helping, and like more folks would come and order dessert,
course.
I
love it.
And order drinks and food, So Providencia is one of those things where I hope people can come. We can't fit everybody at once, but we're
So
on
do you
Resi.
advise reservations?
Yeah.
Okay, reservations
Absolutely.
are the way to go. Okay, steal this recipe.
Yes.
On Substack, what do we got going on? Tell me, because we got to wrap up.
Everything that I couldn't share in Bodega Bakes, I'm just sharing on Steal This Recipe. It's just like if I had to redline some of my recipes, I'm expanding on that. But I'm
Okay.
also talking about, very unique topics like citric acid being the MSG of the pastry world, right? Where is the chocolate going? And the virus that's impacting the chocolate forests in our world, right?
There's so much to discuss. It's so heavy. I mean, we could talk for hours, and we didn't even get into your social media presence, which is massive.
Oh,
You have a
thank you.
huge following, and you really, not only do you do cooking demos, but you also sort of talk. You know, you're very good. I will tell you this. I think you're very good at pointing the camera at yourself
thank
and
you.
talking, because I personally find that I can do this, but this is hard for me. So
Yeah.
I think you do an amazing
Thank
job
you,
of
thank you.
communicating with everybody. Tell everybody, please, where they can follow you
Oh,
on
yeah, for sure.
Instagram, where they can buy the book, obviously, where we can find you at Providencia, all the things.
So Providencia is on Linden Court off of H Street behind Maquero, actually. You can find me on Instagram or on Blue Sky on @SmallOrchids.
I got to get on Blue Sky.
It's
okay.
fine. It's fun there.
Okay, okay.
And then you can find me and my book wherever fine books are sold.
Great. Okay, so just hang here for one sec. So I want to thank everybody. Which camera am I looking at? This one? Okay, so I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Nycci Nellis. This was Industry Night. We are here at the gorgeous Jacques. They have a new chef. There's going to be a new menu. I'm going to be here 4 different times over the next couple months, so we'll get to come back in a lot. We'll get to see the food. We'll get to see the drinks. And I have some amazing guests coming up. Now, next week's show, I'm going to be at Shia because I'm talking to Ed Lee and Mike Graffiti. And then we'll be back here, and I have the fabulous Johanna Helvergel coming in. So thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to follow me at NYCCINELLIS on all the platforms. Like it, subscribe to it, ask me questions, do all the things, and be safe out there and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.